My Hero Academia. All Grown Up. Chapter 4. Bakugou had been watching Kaminari strike out all night. He was on the third attempt at the bar they were at now, and it was beginning to look like yet another swing and miss. Bakugou smirked into his drink as he continued to tally up the score in his head. In fact, none of them had gotten lucky tonight. Bakugou wasn't playing, but he was certainly the scorekeeper. It was like watching a bad reality show, and this was one that he could watch all the way to the credits. Kirishima was leaning on the bar next to him, musing with his blonde counterpart at their friend's failure. Poor bastard. Kirishima tried hard not to slur his words. You know that he told me he hadn't gotten laid in 2 months? Bakugou felt disgusted by the unwarranted information. I don't want to know any more than that. Kirishima side-eyed his friend from his spot. Like you'd even know what that's like. You're just a celibate asshole with too much pent-up energy. Bakugou bristled, but chose not to punch the tipsy redhead. Fuck you, Kirishima. Oh, come on. Kirishima nudged. What's your deal anyway? Waiting on the right girl or something? Bakugou hadn't thought of it like that, hell no. Girls are a fucking royal pain in the ass. I'd sooner kill myself than have to deal with that shit. He decided to go with his normal reply. Kirishima always badgered him like this when he was drunk. Nah. Kirishima shook his head and stood up. I think you've already got your eyes on someone. Bakugou's blood boiled at that remark, but before he could throttle Kirishima's fucking throat, the redhead was paying both their tabs. I can pay for my own. Bakugou spat instead of picking a fight. I already got it. Kirishima tucked his wallet back into his back pocket. Consider it an apology. Apology for what? Bakugou asked with suspicious eyes. Kirishima polished off another portion of his drink and waved his hands around. You know, for mentioning how you feel about. Well, I guess I shouldn't really say her name, should I? Before Bakugou could get the all-important question in, Sero and Kaminari were stumbling back up to the bar. Bartender. Kaminari yelled too loudly, waving his wallet around sporadically and nearly nailing Bakugou in the head with it. I'd like to pay my tab. Fucking hell, Sparky. Bakugou shoved the electric blonde away from him. Let's get the hell out of this place. Sero teetered a bit as he tried to pull his money out of his wallet. The chicks here are clearly blind. Bakugou rolled his eyes and clicked his tongue. I think they can see just fine. Tape face. Good one. Kirishima clapped Bakugou roughly on the back. All right, gentlemen, we have one last place to go. The redhead tipped the rest of his beer back and slammed the glass on the counter of the bar. Kaminari drunkenly cheered as he tossed his tip on the counter. I love guys' night. Bakugou felt a spike of irritation in his chest as he moved to stand. He'd had a decent amount to drink tonight, but he was nowhere near as sloshed as Kaminari and Sero. Kirishima was just riding his buzz like he always did. Never too drunk and never too sober. Bakugou had kept a close eye on how much he'd had. He never let himself overdo it, but he was definitely feeling warm and a little bit woozy. When the four of them stumbled out of the bar, Kaminari and Sero were asking Kirishima where they were going next. I'm thinking we need to somewhere chill. Kirishima sidestepped while he tried to think and walk at the same time. Oh shit, I better pay attention to where I'm going, Bakugou was really starting to think about leaving early now and letting these buffoons babysit themselves. However, he liked the sound of a quieter bar. He could definitely go for a good pool game. He was fucking awesome at it and hustled extras every time. If he could get a few bucks out of it, he figured there wasn't any point in leaving. They all trudged down the street for a while and Bakugou tried to tune out the babbling of his friends. He was losing his patience with Kirishima's shit directions. Pay attention, hair for brains. Where the fuck do we go next? Kirishima stopped at the street corner and looked around with glazed eyes. I think it's this way. He pointed to the left. No, wait. It's this way. Kirishima suddenly switched to the right and wobbled forward. For fuck's sake, Bakugou muttered and followed behind his plastered friends. They all had their arms around each other as they walked, but still swayed as they went. There was no way Bakugou would be caught dead doing shit like that with those fuckers, so he just hung back. Just as they finished passing a bar with an excessive amount of music, a voice called from behind them, "Kirishima?" All four of them turned around and saw none other than Pinky herself. Damn it, Bakugou breathed and tried to usher his drunk friends away. He was not going to do this tonight. All he could think about was the last time he saw the acid freak, and he was not interested in having a repeat of that night. Hey! Kirishima pointed at the pink girl. Look, guys. It's fucking Mina. The grin on his face was obnoxious as all hell. She hurried up to them but still stumbled over herself as she came to a halt. I saw you guys from inside. What are you all doing here? Bakugou definitely wanted to leave now, and he was considering just backing away and disappearing completely. Bar hopping, Kirishima answered dumbly, leaning much too heavily on Zero. What the hell are you doing here? It's girls' night, Mina established with an all-too-happy grin. Fuck. Kirishima spat and shook his head. What are the odds of that? I fucking love girls' night. I told Uraraka to invite me, but I guess you're all too cool for me. He feigned a pout, but it came off as overly childish. Mina laughed loudly. A face-splitting grin took over her face. Bakugou wanted to cringe at them. You're always welcome to girls' night, Kirishima. She crashed into him awkwardly for a hug. When she pulled back, she had to fight for her balance. Where are you boys heading now? That away. Kirishima pointed a thumb behind him. I can't remember what it's called, though. Bakugou immediately rolled his eyes at his unbelievably stupid friend. Why he put up with Kirishima's shit was beyond him. You guys should come. Kaminari blurted out drunkenly. We're going to go. What did you call it, Kirishima? We're going to chill. Kirishima raised his eyebrows and said the words with an obnoxious suffer-like attitude. Chillin' like villains, am I right? That sounds awesome right now, Zero grinned drunkenly. Mina. Everyone looked up to see the other girls coming out the door of the bar. What are you doing? Bakugou watched his earphones, Girl, and Roundface all gathered outside the door to observe their friend exchanging words with the boys. Get over here. Mina waved them over. Look who I found. Hell yeah, get over here. Kirishima waved slovenly. It's girls' night. All three girls giggled at the redhead as they wandered up. Uraraka was the one who really stuck out. She was the only one dressed normally, lacking Pinky's cheetah print and earphones goth getup. Girl was also dressed somewhat normally, but she still blended into everything. Bakugou tried to avert his gaze and hoped Uraraka wouldn't see him. Perhaps now would be the best time to take off. Just as he turned to start walking away from the group, he heard his name being called. He glanced over to see Uraraka waving at him. Damn it, he'd waited too long. Next time he'd have to get out at his first instinct. He paused while she practically skipped up to him with rosy as hell cheeks. That ball of sunshine smile was definitely glued on. So this is what your weekend plans look like, huh? She gestured to the other 6 people right behind her. Bakugou intentionally kept his eyes from looking anywhere but her face. I fucking called it. 1 drink and you're over with. Her smile didn't slip an inch. I am not over with. The insistence in her voice converted to a bubbling giggle. Bakugou wanted to retort something snarky, but felt the words dry up in his mouth as she turned to prance away. She teetered a little and Zero had no problem wrapping his arm around her to steady her. Bakugou pinched his nose irritably and remained at his place a few yards away from the group. As everyone else started to talk and make their way down the street to Kirishima's unnamed bar, Bakugou opted to follow a safe distance behind. From his experience, one of them could puke at any time, and he'd be damned if it was on him. As they walked, He found himself watching that bubbly brunette while she talked with everyone. Her smile was giddy as she exchanged hellos with all her former classmates. He finally allowed his eyes to see her completely. She was dressed cutely, he supposed. Black shorts with the suspenders hanging off the belt loops and a red button-up tank top. The shirt had some ruffles on the front, and he figured they suited her. As soon as he realized he was kind of checking her out, he looked away. Damn it, he didn't even like her. She's a second-rate hero with nothing but a goofy smile. He decided to blame it on the alcohol he'd consumed and tried to keep his eyes to himself. When they arrived at the bar, Bakugou immediately ordered a whiskey and settled into the corner. If he distanced himself from everyone long enough for one drink, then he'd finally have an excuse to leave. He started up his tally for his counterparts again to keep his mind busy as he sipped at the bitter drink. However, none of the other guys were even bothering with the girls dotting the Irish pub-style bar. He was out of luck there. Bakugou, Kirishima called from the bar. Wanna play some pool? Boys versus girls. He pointed to Mina and Jiro. Go to hell. Bakugou snapped back and decided against finishing his drink. I'm leaving. Kirishima gave him a disappointed look. So soon? How am I supposed to win against these two without the grand champion at pool? Bakugou scowled at the trio. Figure it out, dipshit. He adjusted his thin jacket and moved to leave. See you on Monday. Kirishima shrugged and waved a farewell to the blonde before following Jiro and Mina to the pool tables. Bakugou just ignored him and all the other goodbyes from his former classmates as he ducked out of the bar. The cool night air was so refreshing once he could finally experience it alone. At least, he thought he was alone. Uraraka was standing under a street lamp a few yards away with her back to him, her phone pressed to her ear. She seemed to be having an argument of sorts as she pulled on the ends of her hair frustratedly. Bakugou could barely hear her as she spoke. I'm just out having some fun with all our old classmates. I don't see the problem with that. There was a long pause while she listened to the person on the other end of the call. I'm fine. I can take care of myself, you know. Bakugou strained to hear what she would say next without taking another step closer. Well, if you weren't halfway across the world right now, then maybe you could be here too. It finally registered that she was talking to Deku. Bakugou immediately frowned at the prospect and was finally ready to clear out of there. He turned on his heel toward his apartment. Then don't get mad at me for going out. How many times did I say we should move to Tokyo? You know I wanted to, but I stayed for you. Now look where we are. Uraraka's voice cracked with her raised tone. Bakugou halted his exit and listened again, curious as to how this might play out. Sorry, she murmured a while later. That was uncalled for. I'm just... She paused while she thought of the right word. Frustrated with you right now, and I drank a little more than I planned to, so I'm just a little emotional, I guess. Bakugou wished he could see the look on Deku's pathetic face right now. Just picturing it was not nearly satisfying enough. Uraraka didn't mess around when she was mad, and judging by the way she looked right now, he knew she was exactly that. Fine. He could hear the snapping in her voice as she yanked on her hair again. I'll talk to you tomorrow. She hurriedly hung up the phone and groaned toward the empty street. When she turned around, she was surprised to see Bakugou lingering outside the door of the bar. Trouble in paradise? Bakugou smirked at her disposition. Uraraka crossed her arms defiantly, but she didn't really come off as tough. What's it to you? My line again. Bakugou frowned at her imitation. She let her arms drop defeatedly to her sides as she trudged back toward the bar. I thought I was done, but now I definitely need a drink. Bakugou eyed her as she went to reopen the door to the bar. You're going to go hang out with all those drunk losers again? Well, I'm drunk, aren't I? She sputtered and gave him a sharp look. She must be a feisty drunk, and Bakugou was almost amused by it. Yeah, but the better question is this. Are you also a loser? She stopped her hand before it grabbed the handle and thought over his question. Finally, she stood back and crossed her arms again. I'm not a loser. She puffed up her cheeks a bit and pouted. Be straight with me, round face. Bakugou leaned up against the wall. How much have you had to drink tonight? She looked up as she thought about it. I don't know. A few, I guess. Fucking lightweight. Bakugou scoffed. She frowned at him. What about you? I bet you're no better than me. Bold words from such a tiny person. Bakugou clicked his tongue. Too bad you'll never find out. Uraraka was exasperated by now. You're so... She struggled to find the words. Bakugou blinked and waited for her to finish, but she never did. Instead, she just huffed angrily and dropped her arms in frustration. I'm what? Bakugou finally asked. His face looked expectant, but his eyes still stared at her intently. She groaned and leaned on the wall beside him, annoying. She finally finished. Yes, she was definitely a feisty drunk. That's ironic coming from you. Bakugou scowled and looked back toward the street. If only I cared. She rubbed her nose with the back of her hand and followed his gaze to the road. If getting a drink here makes me a loser, then maybe I ought to get a drink somewhere else, huh? Bakugou resisted the urge to look back at her again. Definitely. Just go drink at home alone like a normal sad girl. Rude. She bumped her shoulder against his and pouted once more. I'm not sad either. I'm mad. Bakugou scoffed at her pathetic reply. Bullshitting gets you nowhere, round face. I am. She insisted and stood upright. I'm going to go get a non-loser beverage, so hurry up and decide if you're coming. Depends. Bakugou shifted his eyes to meet hers. I don't want to hear about your shitty problems. Well, you don't seem like a good listener, so... Uraraka fiddled with the suspenders hanging off her shorts and unknowingly swayed a bit, probably thanks to the alcohol. I don't think you have to worry about that. Bakugou leaned against the wall of the bar for another minute and pondered her invitation. The look in her eyes was a silent plea, and the pout on her mouth looked childish. He figured she needed company so that she didn't end up wandering the streets alone. Fuck, fine. He leaned off the wall and ran a hand through his hair. But I'm not doing this to be nice. Fuck that. I'd never hear the end of it from Kirishima if I let you just wander off and get lost. Great, thank you. She smiled sweetly at him and teetered a little as she did. He watched her regain her balance and shook his head. But we're getting coffee. You've had plenty. You're no fun. Are you even a little bit tipsy? She frowned at him and crossed her arms. Bakugou scowled back at her. Unlike some people, I can handle my booze, round face. He turned away from her and began walking away. Now hurry the hell up. Like I said, she rolled her eyes as she got into step beside him. You're not fun at all. He glared at her for a moment before turning away in silence. Kirishima told him that all the time, but it had never bothered him. He didn't care if he was fun or not because it had never been important. His idea of fun was very different from other people, and that worked fine for him. They walked for a while before they came upon a street vendor that was selling cups of mediocre coffee. As Uraraka fumbled for her wallet, Bakugou rolled his eyes and decided to cover the cost. Here. Bakugou gruffly handed her the coffee, nearly making her drop her purse. Her eyes widened a bit as she took it, and she met his gaze with a questioning look. Thank you, she muttered and circled it in her hands before sipping. Bakugou wanted to cringe at himself for his uncharacteristically kind gesture. He doubted he'd ever even bought anything for Kirishima, yet here he was paying for round-face coffee like it hardly bothered him at all. He regretted it as soon as he had done it, but he forced himself to let it go. Perhaps he'd make her pay him back on Monday. She sipped the hot drink again and slowly wandered down the sidewalk ahead of him. He didn't follow just yet, but watched as she looked wondrously at the city around her. He felt a twist in his chest as she stopped and smiled up at the buildings and lights. Isn't this city amazing? She wasn't necessarily talking to him, but just saying the words in general. He breathed out a long sigh before he walked the few yards to meet with her. He followed her starry gaze and looked up at the tall buildings surrounding them. They'd come into the older part of Tokyo, where there were hole-in-the-wall noodle shops dotted among the aging businesses. The street lamps were dimming to a mustard yellow, and the posters that were stuck to them were so faded that they were unrecognizable. I already love this place so much. Uraraka breathed and clutched her coffee with excitement. I can't believe I ever put off living here. Bakugou stopped looking around to look down at her. She had closed her eyes and let the ambience of the city engulf her. So why didn't you just do it? Her trance was broken at his question, and her eyes fluttered open to see him staring at her. She didn't realize she'd been standing on her tiptoes, and she felt her heels fall back to their normal place. Why didn't I just do it? That is such a complicated question. There's a million reasons why I didn't. TCH. Bakugou clicked his tongue with impatience. If you wanted to, then you should have done it. It's not really that simple. Uraraka smiled softly and shook her head. Besides, I thought you didn't want to hear about my problems. Bakugou tore his eyes away from her, willing himself to not care. I don't. I just think it's stupid when people stop following their dreams for other people. I didn't stop following my dreams, Bakugou. I just Uraraka was cut off before she could finish her thought. I don't want to hear it. Bakugou scowled at nothing in particular. It's just an excuse. She fell silent after that, circling the coffee between her hands again. She sighed defeatedly, and she felt her love for the city be overwhelmed with a feeling of regret. She supposed that Bakugou wasn't all that wrong when he called it an excuse. When she put her life on hold for Deku, she had also put her dreams of being an actual pro-hero on hold as well. At the time, she knew she'd been destined for more, but she still settled for the sake of a relationship. For the first time, Uraraka actually felt guilty for hindering herself. Bakugou watched her stare down at the lid on her coffee for a while. Clearly, she was thinking about something pretty hard. In the few minutes he'd been with her since they left the bar, he'd picked up on the fact that she was especially easy to read when she had been drinking. He saw a few emotions pass over her face in that time. First, there was frustration, then there was realization. Finally, she looked sad. Her manicured fingers gripped the coffee cup tighter as she passed away from sadness and back into frustration. You're right, Uraraka admitted after her long bout of silence. It was just an excuse. Bakugou normally would have utilized his smart mouth at this time, but instead spoke up again. Then fucking do something about it, round face. Making yourself miserable isn't going to help you. Uraraka knew that Bakugou's advice was rare and definitely harsh with truth. She'd never seen him be this genuine. In all their years of school together, he'd always been the judgmental bully. However, in this moment, he seemed almost like a friend. She felt a small smile break onto her face. Thank you, Bakugou. The blonde was slightly taken aback and he was shocked at his own words. In an effort to regain his usual demeanor, he fixed a scowl on his face and glared. Don't ever fucking mention it. She kept on grinning like a fucking idiot at him. I won't. He was irked but decided not to push it. Hurry up and call a damn cab for yourself or something. I want to leave. She sipped the coffee again and shook her head. I'm pretty sure I live nearby. I can walk from here. Pretty sure? Bakugou rolled his eyes. Damn it, round face. Do you even know where we are? She glanced around them. Well, I sort of recognize that place. She pointed down the street at a bookstore. He regretting putting himself in this situation more with each passing moment. I'm not going to let you walk alone, so get moving. He tossed his drink in a garbage can a few feet away. The coffee tasted like shit anyway. He turned around and saw her still looking around. Well? Sorry. She giggled lightly. I think it's this way. She marched ahead of him. If this isn't the way to your apartment, I'll kill you. Bakugou felt better getting back to his normal self as he followed her away. I'm serious, round face. She turned herself halfway around as she continued to lead the way. Yeah. Sensitive Bakugou is gone now, I get it. Oh, she was back to being sassy now. Bakugou felt a flurry of insults bubbling up his throat. She'd regret that statement. When Uraraka woke up the next morning, she found that she had slept in her clothes. Her hair was stuck to her face, and her makeup had smeared onto her pillow. She glanced at the time and saw that it was nearly midday. Had she really slept that long? She climbed out of bed and immediately took a shower, washing away all the stickiness from the bar she'd been in last night. As she recalled the events of the night, she finalized them into one thought. Weird. Last night had been very weird. After getting dressed, she felt a lot better. As she dried her hair with her pink towel, she finally wandered over to her purse and dug out her phone. Clearly, the device had been blown up at some point after she'd gotten home. She had missed calls and texts from Mina, all of which were concerned for her well-being and asking where she was. She typed out a quick reply that everything was okay and that she had simply left early. She figured it was best if she left out the part concerning Bakugou. She browsed the other notifications until she saw the 2 missed calls from Deku. For the first time in the last 3 years, she really didn't care that she'd missed his calls. She also didn't feel a rush to call him back. Instead of trying him back, she decided to send a text. Sorry I missed your calls. I got home kinda late. She dropped the phone on her nightstand as she began to gather up her dirty laundry off her bedroom floor. She didn't think Deku would respond for a while, considering it was the middle of the night in America, so she put herself to work on cleaning up her bedroom. She'd certainly made a mess after she got home last night. She gathered up the snacks from the floor that she must have brought to bed with her and wandered out of her bedroom toward the kitchen. When she started restoring said snacks back to their rightful homes, she heard her phone ringing loudly in the other room. She jogged back over just in time to see Deku's name lighting up the screen. She sighed hesitantly before deciding to answer it. Hey Deku. She tried to sound genuine. Hey. His voice sounded concerned on the other end. Is everything okay? She sat down on her bed and pulled up one knee to her chest. Yeah. I just woke up. All right. She could hear a dryness in his tone. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. She closed her eyes with irritation. Of course I am. I can take care of myself, you know. He hesitated on his response. Yes, I know. I just couldn't help but worry. Why? She ran a hand over her face and already regretted her argumentative tone. She could hear a tired sigh from the other end of the call. Are you sure you're okay, Ochako? Hearing her name through the phone felt so foreign all of a sudden. Deku only used her first name on rare occasions, and it didn't feel right to hear it now. Yes. He paused again, and she could practically see the concern on his face. Are we okay? Yes. She said much too quickly, and she could feel the frustration building in her gut. I just don't like feeling like you think I'm just a helpless puppy. All right then. Deku's tone was also somewhat annoyed now. I'm just trying to make sure that you're doing okay. I didn't know that was a problem, so I'm sorry. Well, if you were here, you wouldn't have to wonder. The words slipped out before Uraraka could catch them. She felt immediate guilt at the harshness of them. Sorry, I didn't mean for that to come out that way. Deku sighed through the phone again. It's fine, Uraraka. His words said one thing, but his short tone said another. I'm just going to call you later. Yeah, okay. She closed her eyes and let the anger in her gut fizzle away. I'll talk to you soon. Deku hung up right after she finished her last sentence. She held the phone out in front of her face to see the blinking screen, signaling the end of their call. That did not go well at all. She dropped the phone into her lap and tried not to dwell on her irritation. She huffed and glanced around her tiny bedroom. Everything in there had a memory attached to it. Many of them had their memory attached to Deku in one way or another. As she pulled up her other knee to her chest, she couldn't help but feel like a stranger in her own home. She and Deku rarely fought. In fact, she couldn't think of any time they'd disagreed over anything more than choice of restaurant. When he'd left Japan, she'd assumed that it would be easy for them to maintain their relationship despite the distance. How naive of her. It had only been a little over a week since he left, and she could already feel the distance so heavily. The fact that they still had at least another year of this was a daunting thought, and Uraraka wasn't sure how to feel about it. Unsuspectingly, Bakugou's advice from last night rushed into her mind. He told her that misery wasn't going to do her any favors. It wasn't any kind of special advice at all, but she could feel the weight of those words right now. Was she miserable? She didn't think she was. In fact, she'd never considered misery as how she felt out of the last 3 years with Deku at all. But on the other hand, she definitely hadn't felt truly happy. Well, she was happy, but never elated. When they'd gotten together after graduation, it had been so easy and unpressured. When he told her that he planned to stay close to Yue, she'd conceded and agreed to stay, telling herself that they could always move to Tokyo later down the road. 3 years flew by, and she was only just now getting what she always wanted. She lived in Tokyo now, and she had an amazing job that she could use to help her parents in ways that she only dreamed of since she got out of high school. She couldn't shake the feeling that it had only happened because Deku was thousands of miles away from her. If he hadn't gotten the offer, how long would she have stayed with him in their small city? Deku always traveled out of town to work on specialized missions, and even when he was in town, he never really was all the way there. She reflected on the history of her relationship and felt a semblance of shame. She rested her chin on her knees and pushed the thoughts away. Perhaps she was just overanalyzing. It was habit she was sure she'd picked up from Deku, so maybe all these new thoughts were just because she was angry with him right now. This was all too complex to deal with when she was nursing a hangover. Maybe she just needed some fresh air. So, in true Uraraka fashion, she pulled herself off the bed and kicked on some sandals. A walk around the block would help, she was sure of it. Her smile wouldn't feel fake for much longer. She grabbed her purse and a bottle of water before exiting her apartment. The sun was burdensome on her growing headache, but anything was better than being alone with her thoughts in her tiny apartment. She was sure she'd feel worse if she stayed in. So that's it for today. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. And if you want to contribute to the production of the next chapter, just read the information in the descriptions below.